to eliminate single-use plastic and get to speed up the plastic-free culture. And this is the second year that we're partnering up with Avalanche on the summit. We were also here, we're also helping out during Avalanche House in July in New York City, and super happy to be here again this year and to be telling you a bit more about this.
Nice to meet you all. Christian Stoll from CCRI. I co-founded CCRI a few years ago. For those of you who don't know CCRI, Crypto Carbon Rating Institute, we are the leading provider of CO2 emission data for blockchain networks. So we run a lab, conduct measurements of nodes, model entire networks, are capable to allocate emissions to activities and holdings of crypto activities, and in some instances also support directly in carbon accounting activities. Looking forward to the panel.
Great, and I am Chris Malloy. I'm a communications manager at Ava Labs. Before then I was a journalist for about 10 years, and one of my favorite subjects to cover was sustainability, climate, environment, so definitely at home on this panel. And I guess, Camille, do you want to start with maybe a little bit of a broader intro into Bye Bye Plastic and some of the initiatives we have going on today at this event?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I'm going to get this right. So Bye Bye Plastic Foundation was co-founded together with myself and a DJ called Blondish, who is also very future forward and very eager into the Web3 and blockchain ecosystem. If you haven't checked her as a DJ, you should definitely check her and her involvement in the Web3 and crypto space, because she is a sucker for that. She's really always pushing on what's the next thing, and she understood what was the breakthrough that was happening with blockchain, and really jumped into it, and she also led Bye Bye Plastic in that, so really grateful for that. Bye Bye Plastic, we started the foundation back in 2020, and out of the realization that we all have a footprint and we're all responsible for our own footprints. Events are just as much. But also music has the unique opportunity to be bringing a very different cultural message home, and to in doing that, to speed up the change, the cultural change for plastic-free operations. So we activate all stakeholders of the music and events ecosystem, starting with artists as influencers, and through their voice and their message that they bring, we can in turn talk to audiences as well as to event organizers. So there are two pillars to the foundation. One activity pillar is the education and awareness, bringing awareness to the problem of fossil fuel plastics, of single-use plastics. We always say that these are two very different and sometimes combined challenges. The single-use culture is a problem, the fossil fuel plastic culture is a problem. So we tackle both, and we help get an understanding of what are the challenge points for around this topic in events and how to solve them. And the second part is really more solution-oriented, the second pillar of the foundation, where we, in essence, come as guiders and as consultants to event organizers and help them to carry out plastic reduction activities like what we're doing here at Summit. So as I mentioned, it's the second year that we're partnering up with Summit, and we're extremely happy to be able to bring the plastic reduction initiatives to such a level. We're extremely proud as well of Avalanche's commitment in this trajectory, because this has been really an unabashed commitment, really looking to improve event after event, and starting this co-work last March, because the event summit was held in March last year, and then we really took it into New York City as soon as July, basically, and managed to really have a spotless plastic-free transition over there, and now bringing it back home to the home of Barcelona and for the summits to go. So very, very proud of Avalanche for that.
Awesome, thank you. And yeah, we're very proud to be working with you. I mean, you see it with these guys, the reusable water bottles, all the stations, you know, get involved with them. I'm happy to be using them, and the initiative's amazing. I think, Christian, do you want to talk a little bit about maybe CCRI, a little bit of a broader background into what you guys are doing?
Yeah, more than happy to do so. And maybe I start from the beginning, say a few words about how we started collaborating with Avalanche and what's next. So starting at the beginning, I conducted research on environmental impacts of crypto assets over 7 years ago at MIT and TU Munich. And this was part of my dissertation back then, and one of the papers that I published together with my later CCRI co-authors landed quite well in global media. So at one point in time, we had a CNN statement with over 1 billion views and likes. So basically, we set the foundation of awareness globally on environmental impacts of crypto assets, back then mostly of Bitcoin. So this was kind of phase number 1. And then in the years after, we continued to conduct research on other cryptocurrencies besides Bitcoin, but mostly, again, interest from the media and less commercially driven, so again, purely academic. And then with Tesla's investment into Bitcoin in 2021-ish, the requests we received kind of changed. So previously, this was just media and academic interest, and from this point on, it was more institutional investors asking about their carbon exposure, or at one point, I got a call from a Finnish TV station that asked about the ESG exposure of the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund because of holding Tesla stocks. And so, so this kind of what started as a Bitcoin research became more a broader environmental impact assessment. And at one point, Avalanche reached out to MIT and TU Munich, and we formed a coalition of these researchers back then, because the request from Avalanche was new to us. So the question was, we want a benchmarking of proof-of-stake currencies. And we were like, hold on, there's no methodology for proof-of-stake chains, there's no comparison at all. What should we do? And so we teamed up, a team of researchers from TU Munich and MIT. We got excellent students like Johan, who is now part of our core team, who conducted his master thesis back then. And we started to set up nodes in our lab, conducted measurements, and compiled the first POS benchmarking study, which we could publish with the support of Avalanche earlier last year. And I would say this benefited the entire proof-of-stake area to a large extent, because also the other chains that were not involved in the study setup kind of benefited from the awareness that environmental impacts of proof-of-stake currencies are in a totally different magnitude than proof-of-work. And so I would say this was quite a bold move to commission such a study, and benefited the entire ecosystem, and I'm very glad and proud to be working with you on this topic since then. So what's next? The next version of the benchmarking studies in the pipeline, and I'll present on Friday preliminary results of this POS benchmarking study. Compared to last year, we extended the sample, so this year we also have full platform measurements in there. So for Cosmos and Polkadot, we conducted full ecosystem assessments with all the parachains, which I would say is kind of the next iteration of moving ahead and gaining more transparency on emissions in the space. So, yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And being able to quantify just how green a chain we are through, using your reports has been amazing. I guess that's a nice segue to Jay. Why do we care about being green? Why does Ava Labs prioritize all this? Why does Avalanche even go through the trouble of being so green and sustainable?
I think before I get into the why we care segment, you kind of are realizing it's a little bit of soul searching, especially with our partners. from our perspective, we're not green experts. We're not experts in any of these things. That's why we need to partner with people like Christian and Camille. And so the analogy that I was thinking through as you guys were speaking, it seems very much like a doctor's visit that you haven't gone to in a long time. And so think about COVID. COVID, you're locked up, you eat a few things that you probably shouldn't have eaten, you probably haven't moved for a while, and all of a sudden you look up and everyone's saying, well, fitness matters because you're gonna have to go out in the real world. And so the doctor's visit was a visit with these guys. These guys came in and said, hey, these are the things that you guys are doing well, these are the things that maybe could be improved. From the CCR side, it was basically, RI side, it was basically a benchmark. From the Bye-Bye Plastic side, it was really talking about, hey, it doesn't actually just have to be related to the protocol. You guys are doing massive things, especially things that are touching the mainstream, things like events. You can actually make a deep impact in the event space, and this is what we're doing in music. And I have a music background, so I think it was a little bit easy to really transfer that knowledge and also the network a little bit, but I think one of the most empowering things that we saw as a team is saying we can actually drive this impact, and especially as people are starting to care about just being actually neutral with carbon or even positive in terms of what you're actually returning to the environment. I think that was also an eye-opening experience. Other things like carbon credits and how they're actually more just kind of a figurehead of the space, and there's actually real things under the table. I remember even actually both of you guys with Camille, we were just wandering around the venue and she was like, did you know that this is total bullshit? But did you know that this is actually legit? And I'm like, I had no idea. I recycle, that's all I do basically. And so I think that really was a shift. And really at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of discussion within crypto, especially with the proof of work systems. And so you kind of are going head to head with narratives, and I think it's really important to counter that. No one will know that this technology actually doesn't have to be that negative in terms of environmental impact unless people start talking about it. And I think the second piece really is what maybe Christian was talking about with kind of the next steps, is really about moving the needle along in terms of the industry and how we care as a whole. I think when people are saying, hey, Avalanche is actually commissioning these reports or actually caring about these things, these are the benchmarks, then all of a sudden there's peer pressure. You guys know this space is super, super competitive, sometimes tribal or even most times tribal, and I think that's really where the competitive spirit comes in, and I hope that you guys find success more in our space, and if that happens, I think we've done a good job on our hand to really start pushing the boundaries there. So I think the last thing I'll say is we're not necessarily here to say, hey, these are all the amazing things that we're doing. This was really kind of what I was kicking off with saying that this whole process is about learning. It's learning for me, it's learning for Chris, everyone else on the team, but also learning for you guys. And so I hope that we can continue a healthy dialogue. We'll be wrong sometimes, but we'll also hopefully be right, and that's really what we're looking forward to.
Well said, Jay. And then, Camille, I would love to hear a little bit more about, I guess, some of our past events, and if we could quantify exactly, how many, I don't know if you have it offhand, but there was a great figure about straws at Avalanche House Brooklyn last summer. Do you have any figures that can help illustrate how much we're helping here?
Yeah, absolutely. And before getting into those numbers, the why is the number, like the data and quantification is an absolute key to understanding where you are currently standing and plan where you want to go, and also be able to then look back and look at the improvements and say, okay, this is how much we improved, this is how much we've saved, etc. And you cannot know and then be proud about how much you've accomplished if you do not also have the first benchmark. So definitely also commending Avalanche for walking that talk and understanding with honesty and with integrity, coming in humble on this, and looking at other experts in the space who can actually go and make those calculations. And especially, this report that you've made is extremely interesting and is keystone for the space. So I really hope it gets all of the distribution it deserves. What is the time of your talk, by the way? Because you said it was on Friday. What time are you talking?
Good question. I think around 3.
Okay, 3 p.m. So follow Christian to get the publication on Friday. Definitely super important. On our side, indeed, this is also part of what we do at Bye Bye Plastic. We help events report on the plastic-free operations that we've implemented. So as we said, we had Summit, the first edition of Summit last year, then Avalanche House last July, and we'll obviously be crunching the numbers this year again, where we've made improvement on this Summit too. We managed to not eliminate, but actually, what's the word? Avoid half a ton of single-use plastic from being produced and brought on site, and just from being discarded across both Summit, Barcelona, and Avalanche House last year, which equals to about 2.6 tons of CO2 equivalents. Just for you to understand, in terms of illustration, what 2.6 tons of CO2 means, this is about 1,400 beef burgers. Beef burgers is also, beef has an extremely high carbon footprint. So it's always nice to put some numbers and illustration of, okay, where does we stand? 1 ton of carbon is kind of hard to picture for all of us over here. But yeah, putting it back to equivalence in terms of, how many like the CO2 that trees can sequester, or what's the mileage of an average car with that equivalent of carbon, are things that we're trying to do to help, fix the picture and say, okay, how much are we impacting, how much have we impacted, or how much have we actually avoided and saved. So very looking forward to also know what the numbers will be after this summit too as well.
Very cool. Yeah, thinking about how the carbon savings are happening in a more concrete way is very helpful. And Christian, something I think is really interesting, when you think about like trying to assess a blockchain and think about like how sustainable is this, you guys use some like really intense methods and metrics, right? Can you maybe get into just like, okay, we're looking at Avalanche. Like, what are you looking at? Like, what does the process look like?
So basically there are, I would say, 2 main drivers that drive a network's electricity consumption, which are node count and transaction volume. And third, hardware requirements. So some blockchain networks have very high hardware requirements, so you can not participate with you need very specific equipment which has high electricity consumption, while other networks you can plug in your Raspberry Pi. So that's kind of one factor. The second one is the degree of decentralization. So if you have a network with few nodes, your electricity consumption is directionally lower than if you have a very distributed, decentralized network with thousands of nodes. So that's the second driver, and the third is actual transaction volume. So what is happening in this network? So because a node has a certain base load electricity consumption, and on top you have electricity consumption under load, so if you have transaction volume on it. So that's basically the factors. And when we assess a network, we first look at the hardware requirements, select a representative set of hardware devices that represent the network, set up nodes on all those devices, conduct the actual measurements, electricity measurements in our controlled environment, and record what is happening in terms of activity. And based on those measurements, we can then, with node count and transaction volume, model the networks on a real-time basis going forward.
Cool. Well, it looks like we have about 6 minutes left. Maybe we could each take 2 minutes to discuss things you're looking forward to, green initiatives we have coming up. Jay, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, on the foundation side, we've consistently been understanding our benchmarks, like I was saying before, and last year's reports was a little outdated, but Avalanche blockchain was consuming about roughly 46 households worth of electricity in the US. And that was thanks to Christian and his team. And that was really for us to understand, hey, where are we at? What we did just immediately is saying, hey, let's actually remove the equivalent amount of carbon from the ecosystem, or our world, rather. And so we partnered with a project called Nori, and Nori is very actually close with Bye Bye Plastic as well. They are effectively creating a marketplace for farmers to remove carbon, and then those enterprises to actually transact with those farmers, and so there's actually a really nice marketplace. You can kind of see that segue can lean pretty nicely towards a blockchain-enabled marketplace, and so they are working towards that. So broadly speaking on my side, and I think on the Ava Labs side as well, we're really excited about how this can move forward. And just broadly speaking, all these different applications can help us meet our goals a little bit better, and so we can actually be much more impactful with what we're trying to drive. Also, I think what I'm not as excited about, which is perhaps just the natural course of early industries, is a lot of the noise. And so I think to navigate through that noise, we're going to need to rely on people like these two and their team to make sure that we're actually going about it the right way and not actually coming off as, I don't know, the corporate kind of hand-wavy approach to the environmentally and sustainable kind of focus areas. So again, all about learning, and then we're really excited about what's next.
Yeah, I would say for us, looking forward to continue the collaboration into Summit 3 and further, and into as well as the integration in all of Avalanche's other events throughout the year. It's been really a great journey so far, and a quite spotless one in terms of like how do we wish to approach collaborations and transitions. So as you said, Jay, I guess looking forward to also work with more Web3 events. We've had an amazing welcome in the space so far, and with very honest and open people who are open to the expertise and the guidance, and to understanding how do we really make an impact, not just online, not just on digital elements, but really when we're here and meeting together as humans. So then I would say continuing as well some initiatives like bring your own cup and bring your own bottle initiatives. We know that these are the messages that need to, come home and need to get there several times to get home indeed. And I think again, Avalanche is doing a great job at making this cohesive across all of its events, and that's really making a difference. So really happy for this as well. That's about it in terms of future vision.
Final thought, I would say it's quite interesting to see how the narrative on blockchain environmental impacts has shifted since we started to collaborate. So at the beginning, this was basically a threat for the climate. Everyone thought blockchain is bad and consumes a lot of electricity. With reports as the one that we published, you provide more transparency to the world, to regulators, to users, to developers. And I would say the narrative is now shifting. So blockchain is more and more perceived as an opportunity for climate change and other sustainability challenges. And I would say that's quite an interesting dynamic, and very excited to see what's next and where this path is going.
Great. Well, yeah. And once more, I want to plug the release of your next report, which is going to be on Friday. Christian's going to be giving a talk, and then you guys should all download and read through the reports. They're incredibly thorough. I mean, yeah, there's some great metrics in there. It's if you want to drive this narrative that our industry can be green, he's going to give you a ton of ammo for that. And as a content producer, I'm very thankful for those reports. But yeah, I guess, do we have anything else we want to say? I feel like we've covered quite a bit. All right, well, I'm going to extend a thank you to Camille and Christian. You guys are really making a difference in our space. We appreciate it. And also thank you to Jay for being one of the masterminds behind this event.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.